the Israelites traveling from Egypt to the Promised Land. So this will be the last lesson on the Israelites. Next week we start looking at Ephesians, our whole quarter will be in Ephesians, and that will be Scott's. He's going to take next quarter. I thought I was off the hook as of this week, but then Scott's going to go to Honduras next week. So you have me back one more week after this, and then Scott's going to take over for a little while. So last week, we looked at the Israelites. They were becoming ingrained basically with the Moabite people, and the Midianites started out with the men being enticed by the women of those countries, and then they started becoming ingrained with their society. They began worshiping the false gods that those Moabites and Midianites worshipped. One of the things we looked at, part of the punishment for that, was that God sent a plague among the Israelites, and that plague killed about 24,000 Israelites that we saw last week. So between last week's lesson and this week's lesson, if you read through the book of Numbers, we don't always go through the entire book of Numbers, and so I want to point out a few things that took place. One of the things that you see is in Numbers chapter 26, which we skipped, there is another census in Israel that is taken. Between the time of the Exodus from Egypt and just before entering the Promised Land, Israel went from a little over 603,000 men to a little over 601,000 men. So the census is noted in Numbers chapter 1, and it's noted again in Numbers chapter 26. It's also noted, I believe, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy as well, at different points. But why is that significant? What are some reasons that those census numbers are significant to us and to the history of the Israelites that we can point out? Mike, any thoughts on that? Why do we need to know how many there were? One of the things, and specific to what our lesson's been on in the last quarter, I think one of the things that the census points out is that it shows the power of God to sustain 600,000 men plus families and children over the course of 40 years in the wilderness, wandering through the desert. You know, we've talked about before, God provided manna from heaven, provided quail, but you also have to remember they were in the desert. They weren't always along the river. And so one of their main concerns a lot of the time was how do they get water? And so God, throughout this 40 years, provided for over 1 million people consistently for 40 years straight. So that's one thing to me that if you just look at the numbers specifically, you know, over 1 million people, more than 40 years, I think that tells a big story about how powerful our God is. The second thing we notice is what happened to the population from the beginning of Numbers to the end of Numbers. Did it go up or down? Went down a little bit, at least of what? Men, right? So the census that was taken of men that were of fighting age, basically. Men that could go to war. And so it was men that were 20 years of age or older. So the first census that was taken that we saw in Numbers chapter 1 was men that were 20 years and older. And then the second census, if you really look at it, was all males that were aged 20 to 60 with the exception of 3. Who were the 3 that were the exception? Joshua, Caleb, and Moses. So the difference in the census from the first one to the second one is in the second census there was nobody older than the age of 60 years old with the exception of Joshua, Caleb, and Moses. In Numbers 14, we actually looked at this a few weeks back. God had told the Israelite men in their rebellion that they would not enter into the Promised Land because of their consistent rebellion against Him. Because they consistently made statements like, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt just to die out here in the desert land?" And so after consistently doing that, God finally said, basically, you're prophesying your own death. That's what you're going to do. You're going to die out here in the desert. You're not going to see the Promised Land. But why Moses, Joshua, and Caleb? Why were they exempt? Why were they still alive at this point?
Faithful leader.
So Moses was the faithful leader. What about Joshua and Caleb?
Faithful spies.
Faithful spies, yeah. So all along, they were faithful servants. they were ones that, as the people stood up to rebel, one of the lessons that we looked at, Joshua and Caleb stood up to the people and said, you don't want to do this, you don't want to rebel against God. We do want to go into the land. We've been into the land. It is flowing with milk and honey. We need to do what God tells us to do.
They supported Moses a lot.
They supported Moses a lot. So Joshua, Caleb, and Moses, only men at this point in our quarter that we're talking about that are over the age of 60. I think that's a significant thing to know. So continuing on, Numbers chapter 27, the first part of Numbers chapter 27, right before our lesson today, we see a case that's brought before Moses, and then before God eventually, regarding the inheritance for a father who had no sons, and should his daughter get his inheritance, or what should be done with that inheritance. For me, when I looked at this, I thought this passage seemed a little bit out of place at first. Didn't really understand why it was there. It didn't make sense. Why is this kind of sitting in the middle of these scriptures where it is? And as I really sat back and looked at it, it made a little bit more sense when you put it in context to where we're at. So if you look at 40 years prior, in Numbers chapter 1, we had over 600,000 men who were older than the age of 20, who then had children of their own. And then somewhere in that 40 years, all but 3 of those 600,000 men have passed away. And so you can guess that there's probably more than a few dozen of those men that had only daughters for children. There were probably quite a few, hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands probably, that had no sons, but they had daughters. And so this was a case that was brought before Moses. As the Israelites were preparing to enter into Canaan, there were a bunch of women that were kind of sitting around going, where am I going to go? And what inheritance do I get? What land do I go to? And so this was something that was very significant to the people at the time. So they brought it to God, and God basically said, yes, if the father had no son, the inheritance goes to the daughters. If not the daughters, it goes to the father's brothers. If not the father's brothers, it goes to the uncles, and so forth. So that's just a little history leading up to today's lesson. Anything else about history leading up to today's lesson before we move into today's passage? Anything interesting you want to point out, or anything we talked about before? Okay, so that brings us up to Numbers chapter 27, starting in verse 12. I'm going to read Numbers 27, verses 12 through 23. Now the Lord said to Moses, go up into this Mount of Aaron, and see the land which I have given the children of Israel. And when you have seen it, you also shall be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother was gathered. For in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to hallow me at the waters before their eyes. These were the waters of Merrell and Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, let the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, who may go out before them and go in before them, who may lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep, which have no shepherd. And the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, the son of Nun, with you, a man who is in the spirit, and lay your hand on him. Set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and inaugurate him in their sight. And you shall give some of your authority to him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of the hearing. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in. He and all the children of Israel with him, all the congregation. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation. And he laid his hands on him and inaugurated him, just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. Let's go to the Lord's Prayer. Father God, we thank you so much for your word, Lord, the scriptures that we can look at and study from, Lord, that we can see your people from thousands of years ago, Lord, and the trials that they went through and what resulted of that, God. We can see men like Moses who were righteous, who held to the faith, Lord, who were seen righteous in your eyes, and we can see examples from them and learn how to live our lives today for men that lived thousands of years ago, God. Pray that you will be with us this morning as we study. Please bring your spirit down here upon us and help us to learn from your word and learn from one another, God. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. So a few weeks back, we actually had a lesson on why Moses didn't enter the promised land. We studied about that. So what was the reason? Why could Moses not go into the promised land? Sin. What was the sin? Disobeying God. Yeah. So when the people were crying out they needed water, God told Moses to hold up his staff, and water would flow forth from the rock. Basically, Moses, rather than just holding up his staff and giving glory to God, Moses, in his anger, struck the rock, didn't give glory to God, acted like it was something that he did, basically, and he just found. Aaron went along with it. It was at that time that God told Moses and Aaron that they would not see the promised land. So at this point, we've already seen Aaron has passed away, and Moses is the only one left in his generation, basically. So Moses is getting close to the end of his life. He knows he's not going to get to go with the rest of the Israelites into Canaan. And this is for me where I kind of stop and step back to think about the situation. Step back and look at where the Israelites are in their journey. Moses is twice as old as the oldest Israelite male in the whole country, whole community, with the exception of Joshua and Caleb. What kind of statement does that make about him? What kind of leader does that show that he is? That he stuck it out, basically, through however many generations of men. And he's still there. He's still faithful. When he started leading the Israelites out of Egypt, he was 20 years older than the oldest male that's there right now with the Israelites. So now, 40 years later, he's the only one in his generation still alive, and he's still faithfully leading his people and faithfully looking to God for guidance for the Israelite people. So, in this passage, God tells Moses, go up on the mountain, go see the land that I'm giving to the children of Jacob, children of Israel. He's basically telling Moses the time has come, the end of his life is coming. He tells Moses after he's seen the land, he will be gathered with his people, just as his brother Aaron. And then after that, what does God do? What's the next thing that God talks about? God reminds him of the reason, points out the sin, right? He reminds him why he's not going to stay put in the promised land. So that Moses remembers, not that Moses doesn't remember, but God points that out yet again. And so what I really want to focus our entire lesson on today is Moses' response to God. I think that's where we get our big takeaway from this entire passage, is how Moses responds to God when God shows him the promised land, and this whole conversation basically we see between Moses and God. So before we look at how he did respond, I want to take a few minutes and talk about how he did not respond. Because I don't think he responded in what was the most natural way that we probably all would have responded. What's the most natural human response when somebody tells you that you can't do something that you want to do, or tells you no, basically? You want to do it. You get defensive.
What's my fault?
What's my fault? You get all huffy puffy, right?
Why not?
Yeah, why can't I? What's the reason? Those of you that have kids, you deal with this on a daily basis, multiple times a day. You tell your kids no, and it's just, the end of the world is here. What in the world? Why are you telling me no? I want to do it, and then try to spend the next 30 minutes convincing you why they should do it, or asking you 15 different ways to try to get to do whatever they wanted to do. So that's not how Moses reacted. And I think, so one example too, Evan. So talking about natural human instincts, just as young as Evan is, he's almost 2 years old. He's just learned as his response when he doesn't like what we have to say, to spit at us, to spit it back in. So we'll tell them, if you don't like it, don't do it. So we're having to figure out how to deal with that right now. So we have a basic human instinct to be defensive. When we're told no, to get all puffy, we puff up about it. Even as adults, I think we have that same instinct that when somebody tells us we can't do something, we still kind of puff up about it. We're selfish. We want to control ourselves. We want to control everything around us. And we don't like anything that steers us off course or away from our own plans. I think that's an example that we can go to. I think that's one of the main underlying causes for divorce today. Our divorce rates have risen drastically in the last 30, 40, 50 years. We've become so independent and selfish in our society. We're so focused on ourselves. When people go off and get married, they have to share their time with someone, and they have kids, and they really have no time for themselves anymore. All of a sudden, the things that they wanted to do are no longer a priority for them. And their natural reaction, they've been taught now, is to become defensive, to say, well, it's not my fault, or I should have time to do this. And, as independent, free Americans, unfortunately, the response that's being modeled and taught to people these days is just go bail, find something else that makes you happy, right? That's not what the Bible teaches. I think there are several situations in our life that we have kind of that same reaction where we just react with a defensive, selfish attitude. And that's not what we saw from Moses in this example. So he didn't get defensive. He didn't argue with God. He didn't try to plead his case where he didn't try to say, could I just step on the promised land instead of see it? Because honestly, that's probably what I would have done. I probably would have tried to plead the case to say, I've been with these people for 40 years. I didn't ask for this in the first place. They were complaining the whole time. All these struggles we've been through, wandering through the desert, very little food, very little water. I would have personally probably tried to bargain my way into stepping foot on the promised land. That's how I think I probably would have reacted. But that's not how Moses reacted. He didn't take a selfish approach to it. In fact, how did Moses react? What was his response when God pointed out his sin? What did he say about it? He accepted it. He didn't say a word about it, did he? He didn't argue. He didn't try to persuade him about anything else. He just accepted it. No questioning, no defensiveness. He just accepted it.
It's not like the people, make sure they would be okay.
Right. So this particular lesson happens to be the direct result of sin. So Moses had a sin that we've seen here that was pointed out, and he knows that the reason he couldn't step foot on the promised land was a result of this one sin. I think for us, we don't always know the result of things that happen in our lives. We don't always know what's the result of what sin. We don't understand things that happen to us. But we're going to take this lesson from Moses about accepting the things that happen to us. When it comes to health issues, loss of a job, loss of a home, divorce that happens, all these other things that happen in our lives that we can't control, we're not always able to tie them directly back to the sin like Moses was able to. But what we can learn from this lesson from Moses is to accept basically what life throws our way, not to question, argue, and fight our way through it. The thing that came to my mind as I was preparing the lesson was the serenity prayer, which is not scriptural at all, by the way, in case you didn't know that. The serenity prayer is God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So John's point was, not only did Moses accept the punishment for his sin, but he immediately directed his attention to God's people. He immediately looked at what is best for God's people. He didn't look at anything about Moses. He didn't ask any questions about Moses. He went directly to the Israelites. His concern was, what's going to happen to them when I'm gone? He knew that if he left them without a leader, as we've seen in the past, he went up on Mount Sinai for how long? 40 days. And came back and they already built a calf to worship a false god, basically. And that was with him just going up on the mountain. He wasn't even dead, he was just gone for 40 days. He left him for 40 days and he came back and they were worshiping an idol. And so Moses' concern is, these people are easily led astray. And what's going to happen to God's people? If I'm gone, they don't have a leader. So he's immediately concerned about the people. So his response to God is, God, you got to give them a leader. Who's going to be the leader of these people? I really wish that I had the clarity of mind that Moses had in my everyday life. You know, he had the ability, and everything that he did, to see the big picture of what's going on around him. He didn't focus on himself. He didn't focus on right now. He was able to focus on longer term, bigger picture, everybody else, without focusing on himself. I think that's one of the big lessons we can take from Moses. That's the lesson I want to talk about today. It's a really short lesson. Anybody have any other thoughts on today's lesson or on the Israelites in general? Next week we're going to be flipping over to Ephesians.
The other thing was kind of hard, Moses had Cory ever chose him for this role. And I think the fact that Moses has said something one-on-one time with God, part of the lesson is love, not seeing, not being able to go into the physical world, there's anywhere to go. The whole purpose of things that took place in the Old Testament, which lead us to seeing the spiritual side of things, not the physical side. And so the physical promised land was probably not as important to Moses at this point. I mean, yeah, he'd been walking toward it or around it in circles for 40 years. I'm sure he wanted to go in, but God would just tell him, you're about to gather two people. And that would be at the least comforting, if not exciting.
I think that Moses also knew, I mean, he saw what happened to his brother Aaron. He knew that, you know, his life was coming to a close as well. And I think that his spiritual maturity was where it needed to be. And that's something that, you know, like you said when you were talking earlier, you know, a lot of folks are very selfish, very self-centered, and it's about them. And I think as you get older, especially when you have kids, it's not about me, it is about them. But then when those kids grow and get gone, hopefully you've matured and you still realize and understand it's not about me, it's about God. And I think that Moses was there with that and had comfort in that. And that's another reason why he carried on with the mission given to him. And I think also, I mean, Moses had some very good education. He had to have been trained militarily as well by the Egyptians when he was raised. And you don't blow off a mission. I mean, you got to finish it. And but I just think his maturity is what carried him through. Also, spiritual maturity with God and understanding this is what it's about. It's not about what Moses wants. It's about what God wants.
Anybody else?
Well, also I believe that Moses felt that even in death, God would not abandon him. That, like we believe today, life eternal. I believe he knew that also. So that would ease problems we have on earth, knowing that in the end, it's always be good.
Dan, here to close this one in prayer.
Father in heaven, we thank you again for this day and this opportunity to study more about your word and how you would have us to live. Lord, help us take what we've learned and apply it. And help us accept the things that happen in our lives servants. Steve, shall move.
Correct.